It is that time of the year again, time for new Intel CPUs. Following the successful launch of the 13th gen models last year, of course we now have the 14th gen lineup, which promises more performance and comes with fancy new AI features. Intel is also pushing its extreme power delivery specification with these 14th gen chips. This comes in the form of a new extreme power delivery profile that allows for improved multi-core performance if and when your cooling system allows for it. You also need to have a motherboard design with power delivery that supports Intel's extreme power delivery profile. Intel says these new power profiles aren't for everyone and will require the best possible cooling system for your CPU. The 253 watt of power might prove too difficult for even the most basic coolers to handle. In short, Intel has opened up a lot of headroom for enthusiasts to fiddle around with various power profiles in order to bypass the usual throttling limits found on the 13th gen units. It goes a long way to improve your performance with just a simple setting change. Of course, these new profiles aren't readily available and only a handful of motherboards include support for the performance. ASUS sent me over the new refreshed ROG Maximus Z790 board, which I updated to the latest BIOS. The board not only includes the right power delivery but also comes with all of Intel's new profile settings, which can easily be toggled in the settings. So just how powerful are these new 14th gen chips? Well, in this content I'm going to put the Intel Core-i9 14900K to the test using the ASUS ROG Maximus Z790. The motherboard is being cooled by the ASUS ROG Ryujin 2, which is thankfully more than capable of cooling the 253 watts the CPU uses when powered by the extreme power delivery profile. I'm also going to showcase some Nvidia DLSS 3.5 in action. I know this isn't directly related to this Intel 14th gen CPU, but ASUS sent me over a new Mesa Scion pre-built PC to play around with. These new Mesa Scion pre-built PCs contain various ASUS components inside and will be available locally from Wootware. It means you can simply purchase one product and it comes ready to go right out of the box. ASUS will also have various builds available to purchase with different components and specs. The company is also running some cool giveaways for anybody who picks up a pre-built PC. I will leave links in the description where you can find the pre-built models and everything you need to know about the giveaway. This specific PC build included the 14th gen Core-i9 14900K of course. It also came with the revised ASUS ROG Maximus Z790, an ROG RTX 4080, 32GB of DDR5, 5600MHz of RAM, the Ryujin Cooler 2 and a Gen 4 M.2 SSD. The ASUS ROG Maximus Z790 is the new motherboard revision released by the brand to accompany the new 14th gen chipsets. It is an enthusiast board and focuses on water-cooled builds. It features some noteworthy features such as a Gen 5 M.2 slot that comes with its very own large heatsink. You can see this in the video here. It is the metal part with the word Apex on it. The board also comes with 4 Gen 4 M.2 slots with smaller heatsinks. Another big feature on the board is the support for Wi-Fi 7. This allows the board to connect to 320MHz bands, which is the latest generation of Wi-Fi available. Of course, you'll need a compatible router to benefit from this. Don't feel bad if you don't have one, it is all relatively new. ASUS has also included a new type of connector for the antenna the brand calls the Q antenna. Instead of using a screw top connector, this new antenna simply clips into the board's pins. It also comes with some nifty smart features which allow users to launch an app on Armoury Crate which shows off the signal strength and lets you move the antenna around while having the live preview of the connection quality. The ASUS ROG Maximus Z790 also comes with the latest DDR5 support with frequencies that support up to DDR5 8400MHz. This is thanks to the 2-slot RAM layout and the included fan kit to help keep these modules cool. Other features include QC4 support with up to 20 gigabits per second of USB speed through the front panel with 60 watts of power delivery at the same time. This is pretty impressive for a motherboard. Of course, it has all been built with Intel 14th gen in mind and comes with some extra heatsinks around the CPU cooler. But I will test this all in a bit. Now onto the benchmarks of the chip itself. By default, the ASUS build set the 14900K to the max possible wattage using Intel's extreme power delivery profile. Even without diving into the settings, this was clear by the increased temperatures the chipset ran when benchmarked. It maxed out at 88 degrees during multi-core tests and 51 degrees during single-core tests. In terms of energy consumption, the CPU maxed out at 253 watts during multi-core tests. I saw this hover at around 250 watts most of the time. During single core tests, this maxed out at 70 watts. In terms of clock speeds, single core hit 5.7 GHz while multi-core hit 5.0 GHz. I then ran some benchmarks using Intel's extreme power delivery profile, and these are the scores I got. You can easily tweak these power settings in the BIOS and even disable Intel's new turbo mode toggles if you want to. To show the difference between the enabled turbo mode and the disabled mode, I turned it off and ran Cinebench tests again. The CPU max wattage during a single core test maxed out at 25 watts and during multi-core tests maxed out at 68 watts. Thermals definitely showed a decrease in temperature too. I measured 35 degrees during single core tests and 42 degrees Celsius during multi-core tests. Clock speeds also measured much lower, with single core clocks averaging at 2.6 GHz and multi-core clocks at 2.2 GHz. This method is definitely for those who are more energy conscious and don't see themselves using the turbo mode. This mode is also for those who opt for not using water coolers. This shows quite a substantial change, not only in overall power usage but even in the temperature and sound. While benchmarking with turbo mode disabled, I barely even heard the PC and cooler fans kick in. This is compared to the loud experience with the turbo mode enabled. This is obviously expected given the huge power draw on the CPU here. Of course, there's still a lot of room to push the CPU even further. Considering the max temperatures I hit were still below 90 degrees Celsius, I could possibly push this even more. I could also make use of the AI overclocking features built into the system. In addition, I could disable the 90 degrees Celsius limit on the cooler. Both are also done in the BIOS. Here the system automatically adjusts the core clock speeds depending on your cooling and performance, and it is possible to reach higher clock speeds. Strangely enough, with AI overclocking enabled, that's actually decreased all my performance during tests. I struggled to hit close to 80 degrees and it ran slightly lower at 5.0 GHz. The max CPU power also stayed around 200 watts. I then disabled AI overclocking. Keep in mind that these features improve over time the more your PC runs and it tracks the performance and cooling while you're busy with it. Another route to go is using Intel's Extreme Tuning utility, also known as XTU, which in turn does some AI magic to determine the capabilities of overclocking your PC. It is a much safer, user-friendly feature. I have to say that compared to the 13th gen Core-i9 13900K, the new gen model seems to be a step in the right direction. Whereas last year's model constantly sat at 100 degrees Celsius and maxed out the performance, the new model comfortably sits at under 90 degrees and delivers more performance. Of course, you still have to keep in mind here that the CPU is using a lot of power. It is incredibly energy hungry, but at least it hasn't increased over last year's chip. All in all, I was impressed with how well the ASUS ROG 2 and ASUS ROG Maximus Apex Z790 cooled the CPU. In last year's model, it had struggled at 90 degrees and if anything, it throttled during benchmarks. But the new Apex build combined with this cooler seems to be a winning combination if you want to push this chip further. Lastly, let's talk about DLSS 3.5 on this ASUS Mesa Scion build. If you don't know, DLSS 3.5 is Nvidia's newest frame generation tech which promises even more performance over DLSS 3.0. Using this build, I was able to push Cyberpunk 2077 to full 4K and maintain 120 frames per second with Psycho ray tracing enabled. I had DLSS 3.5 on ultra performance of course. But ultra performance with DLSS 3.5 looks so much better than DLSS 3, and that was definitely clear with the tests here. Where DLSS 3.0 resulted in somewhat noisy images, everything was much cleaner here. It is crazy to think that this is possible. Can't imagine where we'll be in a few years' time with all this upscaling technology. So let's summarize. Intel's 14th gen 14900 is powerful but pretty much plays it safe on the performance advancements and new features. It is nice to see the chip running cooler, from my experience anyway. The ASUS Mesa Scion build is also a great initiative. It saves you the hassle of buying parts and running whether or not it will all work together. You just buy this thing and turn it on. I do plan on revisiting some 14th gen content in the weeks ahead, so be sure to subscribe to stay updated when that goes live. Huge thanks to ASUS for sending all this stuff for me to play around with. Also be sure to visit www.glitch.online for more gaming tech news and reviews. Until next time, farewell.